Okay. Welcome into another Patriots Q A. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Sierra Goodwill here with Evan Lazar. Evan, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I was a little late, folks. It's my fault. Don't blame Sierra. Okay, moving on.
It's okay. We weren't as late as the technical difficulties last time, but no big
That's
deal.
true.
So we'll start over on Twitter when we got a couple questions before our live chat here. And someone wants to know about Juwan Williams and his ceiling, his potential. We know there's a deep cornerback group on this roster, but what kind of player can he blossom into?
Well, I think that what we're seeing right now is that Juwan's realizing that to make the Patriots and have an impact on the Patriots, you got to make yourself as versatile as possible. And just being a boundary corner or an outside corner, unless you're Stephon Gilmore, is not really going to cut it in this Patriots defense. So he's out there, he's learning safety, he's learning box roles, like box linebacker roles or hybrid roles now for the Patriots, as we'd call them in 2020. And that's the sort of approach that he's going to have to take to get onto the field, because he's not going to get on the field just playing outside boundary corner. In terms of his ceiling, I think he's got a great ceiling in a matchup specific way. And in today's NFL, I think that that's really could work out well for him. You know, in certain matchups, one week he might be taking Travis Kelce or a Zach Ertz or, George Kittle or someone like that at the tight end position. The next week, maybe it's a big wide receiver. It's a Mike Evans. It's someone along those lines. It can change week to week. And I think that that's a good thing with this Patriots secondary as a whole, is that they have so many versatile players, so many versatile chess pieces. One week they can do one thing with them and the next week they can do another. And I think Juwan Williams has to fall in that sort of umbrella.
Let's head over to the live chat. Continue to drop your questions in and we'll try to get to as many as we can. The number one question here we also got on Twitter earlier. How many wide receivers do you think will make this roster and which ones will they be?
Well, the way that I look at it right now is I think that they do have the depth. They don't necessarily have, a Randy Moss at the top of the list right there, but they do have the depth there. I think that they would like to hang on to that depth because, quite frankly, stuff happens. We saw it over the last couple of years. Guys get hurt. Guys don't pan out. Things don't work out the way you wanted it to for certain guys, Josh Gordon or Demaryius Thomas or whoever the case may be. So you have to have that depth. So with that in mind, I would think that they're going to keep 6 guys at the wide receiver position right now. I'd go with Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry, Mohamed Sanu, Damari Bird, Jacoby Myers. And then as far as the 6th goes, I think that that's truly an open competition between Gunnar Olszewski, Marquise Lee, the 4 undrafted guys. I think that 6th spot is totally up for grabs.
In this next question, they know you're a film junkie, Evan. If you don't know, check his Twitter out, then you'll know. What do you look for when analyzing a quarterback? For the Patriots.
For the Patriots. Okay. Well, I think that the most important, I'm not sure if they're asking, what my process is or what my kind of the scouting terms that I would say are the most important traits for a quarterback. But when I'm watching film of a quarterback, I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to put yourself in that player's shoes, right? And you have to go through what his checklist is mentally on the field before the ball is snapped. So the biggest thing for a quarterback before and after the snap is IDing where the safeties are on the field. So I'll put that out there. You have to find out where the safeties are on the field, because safety rotations and safety positioning dictates what kind of coverage it is that you're dealing with. So if you have 2 deep safeties, then it's a cover 2 or it's a quarters coverage or maybe a man cover 2, something like that. If you have single high or a post safety coverage, then you're talking about cover 3, cover 1, cover 6 has some variations where they go from a post safety look, but we won't get into the weeds too much. Point being, identifying the coverage, understanding the structure you're going up against is the first answer for all quarterbacks.
Love it. And our friend Brady Anderson here wants to know, do you think the Patriots defense will be ranked top in the league once again this season?
That's a good question. I mean, I think they have some steep competition within their own division with the Buffalo Bills. That defense is going to be really, really good as well. So I think it's going to be a competition between a couple of different teams. I think that with the Patriots, though, the one thing that you would like to see is that turnover rate that they had last year at the beginning of the year when the boogeymen were truly flying. That was unsustainable. There was no way that they were going to turn the ball over that often for the rest of the year, for the foreseeable future. And there's no way that they were going to convert those turnovers into touchdowns at the rate that they were doing it. The amount of special teams and defensive touchdowns the team scored last year was silly, and it's probably never going to happen again. So I think the biggest thing is with this Patriots defense is being sound in their scheme and sound in their fundamentals moving forward. So that they can still be a very impactful defense. They can still bring it to opposing offenses and set the tone and dictate terms. But at the same time, I do think there will be a little bit of statistical regression just because there's no way that they're going to have that sort of turnover rate.
The amount of points they got for my fantasy team, it will not be matched. It will not be matched. All right, next question is about Devon Asiasi. We know how much the Patriots like him, but why do you think he went so unnoticed in the draft? There were multiple tight end names that we talked about a lot more than Devon Asiasi, and it seemed like the rest of the league did as well. He has no real obvious weaknesses, he says.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with Asiasi, and when I tweeted out his thread, I said it too. Then I was like, what am I missing with this guy? This guy's a lot better than some of these other tight ends that are being touted ahead of him, like a Bryson Hopkins, for example, or a Colby Parkinson, who people had ahead of him, or Josiah DeGura, who I loved, but I didn't really think was a better player than Asiasi on tape. I think the biggest thing that, with Asiasi is that he was a one-year wonder at UCLA because he transferred from Michigan to UCLA. He really had a redshirt year. Essentially, he was on the team at UCLA his first year there, but he barely did anything. So he's got 1 year of really, really good production and 1 year of really good tape. And the rest of it was kind of, by the wayside, the rest of his college career. So I think that's the biggest thing is that, it was a 1 year wonder type of situation. He flew under the radar a little bit, especially in that program at UCLA. There wasn't a ton of buzz draft-wise coming out of that program. They didn't have a ton of huge prospects coming out of that program this year, so there wasn't a ton of buzz with the UCLA football team as it was. And then on top of that, the 1 year wonder thing. But I agree with his analysis that he can pretty much do everything that you want him to do. Now he's more of your traditional inline type of tight end, hand in the dirt, wide tight end, but he can block a little bit. He can certainly get up the field and vertically stretch the defense. He's going to be great on the Patriots play action passes.
And Doug is concerned about the Patriots' run-stopping ability. Who do you see filling the middle of the defense?
Well, I think that this is mostly just a concern. I'm not going to go on a whole rant about running games and how important they are in the NFL and running backs don't matter and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's more importantly situationally, right? Like last year, they ran into a running team in the Tennessee Titans, and the fact that they couldn't stop the run as effectively as the pass ended up rearing its ugly head. But at the same time, if you go up against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, then it's probably not going to matter as much that you can't stop the run as long as you can slow down Patrick Mahomes a little bit. So I think the biggest thing for this Patriots run defense, though, moving forward, is that some of their younger linebackers, especially Juwan Bentley, he's going to have a big impact and be sort of that run stuffing linebacker alongside a Hightower to really help out those guys up front. And then the other name I'll throw out there, Adam Butler. The team is expecting massive things out of him this year, both as a run defender and a pass rusher, as we know him more as a pass rusher. They want him to be just as good as a run defender too, and he's starting to creep up there. Pro Football Focus had him pretty highly in their run stop percentage. He was only out there for about 90 run stop snaps, but he had 40 stops on those 90 snaps. So he's got a lot of production in a short amount of time and just a little bit of playing time against the run. So Butler, Lawrence Guy, certainly, obviously, and Bo Allen is sort of going to be the three anchors on that defense along with Hightower and Bentley.
Love it. And we have a question here about Patrick Chung and a possible replacement if he were to get injured.
Well, the Patriots have got plenty of replacements for Patrick Chung if he gets hurt. And so probably the deepest position on the roster is that strong safety, hybrid safety role. Chung goes down. They got Adrian Phillips. They got Terrence Brooks. They got Kyle Duggar. All those guys can play that role. That is probably the one spot where I would say, I like Patrick Chung a lot as a player, and I'm not wishing that he gets injured. But I would say if he does get hurt, that's the one spot they're probably as sure as any position on the roster right now.
And we heard that the preseason opener had been canceled and the Hall of Fame situation was canceled in early August. Do you think that the Patriots' first preseason games or any of their preseason games are actually going to happen at this point?
I would think that there's going to be at least 1 or 2 preseason games. It's kind of impossible to not have any preseason games. It's going to be a sloppy product out there week 1 in September if there's no preseason. And we see the product being a little bit sloppy in September as it is because of all of the CBA things with practice time and no more 2-a-days, no more padded practices every day, and sort of the limitations that the new CBA has put on practice. That's reared its ugly head already in the month of September, really, those first couple of weeks. And then you add on top of that maybe, they might not have a preseason or have preseason games, and it's going to be even uglier, I would say. So I would think there's be 1 or 2 preseason games, probably 2, probably cut it in half. But at some point in time, they got to play football if that's the plan. If the plan is to play the season and the plan is to play football this fall, then you got to play.
And I know Patriots fans and even Patriots media get really excited about undrafted free agents. We talked about that last time we were on here. So Eddie might be taking it a little too far and asking, do you believe there's any chance of Jamar Smith winning the starting quarterback job?
0, but I do think there's a chance of Jamar Smith making the roster, right? And I think that he's a really talented quarterback that has a very good chance of being that third guy if the Patriots do want to carry 3. I think the one thing that you see with Jamar Smith that really doesn't get talked about enough, I think, with young quarterbacks is how he operates in the pocket, his ability to maneuver in the pocket, his footwork in the pocket, his agility and his sense. He's got kind of a sixth sense about it where he can feel pressure coming from his blind side and be able to duck and weave and bob, sort of like Tom Brady, in and out of the pocket and make people miss, and really create and extend plays for himself. And that's a skill that is innate. It's usually one that is very difficult for quarterbacks to learn. And you see some young quarterbacks are just a disaster in the pocket, and their pocket poise and their pocket presence is a disaster. And the one thing you can give Jamar Smith certainly is that he's got the arm talent and he's got that pocket presence. And I think that those are 2 big things with the Patriots offense.
Well, Ashwin, read your thread on Twitter about Mohamed Sanu. So after a healthy offseason, what do you think his ceiling will be this season?
Well, talking to some of the people that, some of his trainers, Hamilton Alexander, Sideline Hustle on Twitter, I talked to him about Mohamed Sanu also. Footwork King, when I talked about N'Keal Harry, we also talked about Sanu. The one thing that all these guys, these football guys keep on telling me is that Sanu knows how to get separation. He knows how to get open with his route running, both at the line of scrimmage and at the top of his route. Hamilton Alexander told me that he basically is the only player that he trains that can get open at the line of scrimmage in his releases without his hands, just with his feet, because his feet are so quick and his ability to attack angles and understand leverage is so good that he doesn't even need to touch the defensive back. He can just kind of shake him at the line of scrimmage and create space for himself. And then similarly at the top of the route, Hamilton also said that Mohamed Sanu doesn't need to slow down. He doesn't need to decelerate to stop, right? He can stop and start on a dime and get in and out of his breaks with smooth transitions. And those are things that kind of go unnoticed sometimes, especially when you're injured like Sanu was last year, and a little bit of that explosiveness leaves you, so you don't get that separation the same way that he used to early on in his career or even early on last season. But I'm telling you, this guy knows how to run routes. He's a professional route runner. He understands how to get open. He understands the nuances of the game and the details of the game. Let's get him healthy and let's get him out there, because I think that he's the type of receiver the Patriots usually like.
One other wide receiver who's trying to get back out there is Josh Gordon. We know he recently submitted his appeal to be reinstated. He's currently under an indefinite suspension for yet another violation of the NFL's substance abuse policy. Do you think there's ever a chance that he comes back to the Patriots, or was that situation last year where they put him on IR when something was a little fishy? Was that just all too strange that he can't come back?
I would say that it's a pretty big long shot for him to come back to the Patriots. The biggest thing last year was that not necessarily that they knew the suspension was coming, but I actually think the biggest thing with Josh Gordon last year was that he really wasn't himself. He was kind of a shell of himself out there at times. He had clearly lost a step, maybe a step and a half in some of his vertical routes as well. And I just actually think the team thought that he wasn't that good anymore last year, quite frankly. And they were looking to get N'Keal Harry involved. They wanted to get him, hit the ground running. And I think that was a bigger thing of it as well, was that they knew that they were going to give Josh Gordon snaps in his role in the offense at the X spot to N'Keal Harry as soon as N'Keal Harry got off injured reserve. So there was really no reason to keep Gordon around. I don't see Gordon coming back to the Patriots, especially because probably the biggest advocate for Josh Gordon on the Patriots now plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That is very true. Next question. Do you think Damien Harris has the potential to supplement Sony Michel? Does the Pats becoming more of a wide zone running team make Michel's job safer, or would it increase the value of Harris's pass catching?
Well, I think the biggest thing with the Michel versus Harris thing is mostly about Sony's health right now. Sony starts the season on PUP. If he starts training camp on PUP, then the Patriots are going to have to give carries elsewhere. And that's when you can get passed over, right? They really allowed him to come back in his rookie year and sort of take the bull by the horns and gave them that role back without really any competition there. But I think that moving forward, he's going to have a little bit more of a steeper hill to climb there. And if Harris is very impressive in the preseason, or Burkhead's very impressive in the season, or the combination of the two, and Michelle is sidelined with that foot surgery, then I would not be surprised at all if Harris is still able to stay in the rotation when Michelle comes back. Now, is his receiving skills with the wide zone rushing attack, it's not really a huge part of it, I don't think. But I think the biggest thing with the wide zone rushing attack is that whichever running back can give them that quick initial burst and that downhill cut, that one cut ability to get vertical quickly in a hurry and accelerate from 0 to 100 as fast as possible. That's what you need in that system, right? You need a burner in that system. So maybe that isn't Michelle. And I think that's the one kind of caveat to we've all talked about it. I've written about it. Other people have written about it, the wide zone movement and getting into that more Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay style of offense. But the biggest problem with that is if you look at the success that those two guys have had with that offense, it was with Raheem Mostert, who ran track in college and runs a 4.32 40-yard dash. And it was with Todd Gurley. He was one of the most explosive players in the league when he was healthy and at his 100%. The Patriots might not have a wide zone running back, and that might be the reason why we don't see it as much as people are expecting.
Love it. We'll answer a couple questions here, so drop them if you have them in the live chat. Who do you think will make the roster at fullback?
I think that they're going to keep all these guys. Honestly, I think that all of them have a little bit of a different sort of style to them, that it's enough difference that they're not redundant bodies on the roster. I also think that they realized last year how important those fullback formations were to their offense, and having to put a Landon Roberts in there, I don't think was really the answer that they wanted to have to turn to. So I really do think Jakob Johnson and Dan Vitale are both going to make this team. I think Vitale is versatile enough that he can play a little bit of tight end. He can play a little bit of H-back. He can play fullback. That along with Dalton Keene, they can kind of have some interchangeable parts there. And the biggest thing, I think the coolest thing about this whole thing to me, and I wrote about the RPOs today, and then, kind of supplemented that with what I was writing about them kind of taking over that McVay Shanahan offense, is that teams are not really going to know what kind of personnel they're really in. Is this 12? Is this an I formation? Is this spread? Is this an RPO? What are we looking at here? Who's going where? What receivers are releasing into what routes? That's going to be the real fun thing about this offense. There's going to have to be, I think personally, some smoke and mirror aspects to this offense of, we're in 12 personnel, but really it could be 11 because we can flex Devon Asiasi out here, and he's kind of a wide receiver, but he's also a tight end, and Dalton Keene's kind of a tight end, but he's also a fullback. And, the ability to move guys around like that and come at them with different formations, that's going to be the fun thing about this Patriots offense to me.
And we talked about this a little bit on Tuesday, but Doug's asking about how the Patriots defense ranked 26th in the league and giving up yards after contact, but you weren't so sure that they were all that bad at that.
Yeah, no, that was something that surprised me. I'm not sure where that stat's coming from exactly. Maybe it's the PFF guys that put it out there, but the Patriots are always notoriously a very good tackling team. I didn't think that their tackling was a major issue last year. Some of their breakdowns, I thought defensively, had more to do with just good offense versus good coverage. How many times, you see that Kenny Stills touchdown, for example. I just watched it against Houston in that primetime game last year. That was just a great throw and a great catch by two good players, right? That was great coverage, and it just got beat by a better offense. I didn't look at it last year and see everybody missing tackles or yards after catch or yards after contact being this massive detriment to the Patriots defense. I think they were pretty solid all around.
Mike wants to know, do you see any similarities in the tape of N'Keal Harry and CeeDee Lamb, the rookie wideout?
Yeah, I do see a lot of similarities. Both those guys win with kind of, first of all, they win after the catch. That with the ball in the hands is where they're at their best. And both Harry and Lamb have college highlights of them, kind of escaping tackles from 4 or 5 different guys, and it's pretty incredible to watch. I would say that that's their best traits, are those yards after catch ability, the contact balance, ability to run with the ball in their hands. From there, neither one of them are overly explosive route runners, and they win a lot with kind of body positioning and a thick frame and being able to box out and win at the catch point and win down the field in a vertical plane, going up above the rim. So I do see some similarities there. I think that CeeDee Lamb has a little bit of a higher ceiling because of his technical refinement, especially at the line of scrimmage, and his route releases is well beyond what N'Keal Harry was last year as a rookie. So maybe that gives him a little bit of a higher ceiling, but I don't think it's that outlandish to say that those guys are similar.
Last one before we end on a fun one. Is Marcus Cannon worth the salary?
Well, I think the biggest problem for Marcus Cannon is that even if the Patriots don't think that he's worth the salary, I don't think anybody else is going to think he's worth the salary either. So there's not a ton of trade interest right now, I would say, in Cannon. I think that the biggest thing with the Patriots and their cap situation is other than the $26 million in dead cap that they have because of Tom Brady and Antonio Brown, the other sort of nugget about this situation, why they're so tight up against it, is that they've kicked prorations of salaries down the road time and time again. And Marcus Cannon's been one of those guys that's converted salary into signing bonus for the team to save cap space in the immediate future, but then it costs them down the road. So guys like Cannon, guys like Hightower, guys like Stephon Gilmore, who have taken sort of these salary restructures in the past, well, now the bill's coming due. We're finally at it with the bills coming due with the, this kind of dynasty 2.0 or the second half or the decade, the second decade of the dynasty. Finally, some of these guys are their prorations and their salary bonuses are finally hitting the books. So I think the biggest thing with Cannon, though, is that his reliance and kind of his consistency and his reliability will certainly be important enough, I think, for the Patriots to keep this year. If Yodny Kajus can stay healthy, can have a season under his belt learning from Cannon, then I think that there's a chance that he could be the starting right tackle of the future. But for right now, I think Cannon will be where he's at for the last, 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years at this point.
I love when we get a fun one to close things out. Ashton wants to know one thing that both of us miss because of COVID-19. Evan?
One thing, I would say sports, but I think that's pretty cliche. And given our backgrounds, I think people realize that we miss sports. I think the biggest thing that I miss personally is going out to a restaurant and sitting at a table and having a meal, whether it's with my family or whatever. And I just really wish that, we could still do that because I love to eat and I love going out to restaurants. It's one of my favorite things to do. So the fact that we can't do that is killing me. You don't have that same sort of it's a great kind of conversation that you get to have, with people around the table that, that's my whole life right there, was sitting around the dinner table and talking to my parents and stuff like that. And the fact that I can't do that right now is a little bit upsetting for sure.
I'm giving you two, Ashwin. One, we usually go on a family vacation every spring, had to cancel our trip to Outer Banks, really stunk. We waited to the last minute, but ended up having to cancel it. Second one, getting my nails done. I've never not had my nails done for so long, since I was probably 11 years old, and it's killing me. So the nails, the family vacation, I miss it all.
Absolutely. I think we're in the same book on the first one. The second one, I can't say I really do my nails.
Well, we'll join you back here, same time, same place next week for another Patriots Q A at 1 p.m. on Tuesday. Follow us on Twitter at Patriots CLNS, at Sierra Goodwill, at Easy Lazar, so you never miss it. Don't forget to also subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Patriots Press Pass so you get that notification and get all of our Patriots content that we put out on a daily basis. Thanks for joining us.